start the presentation. Um, so yeah, we'll start in our second and final week. I didn't even remember that next week we have the Holy Week. We have Semana Santa in Venezuela, and now I understand
Uh,
why we are finishing this week basically. Um, so, anyways, so thank you for being here, Alba, in such a short notice. Um, and let's immediately start discussing today's agenda. Remember, the idea of having this format is to show in this with the strike through what we have covered on each from each section. And I'm gonna be sitting like this because I had a little issue with my knee last Saturday, so I need to have my leg, like this.
or did you
I
fall down or something like that? Did you fall or something like that?
No, I was hit. I received a hit there, but exactly on the knee.
Uh,
So I need, with some
left or
ice
right?
and stuff.
Left or right knee?
So I prefer to have it like this and not bent. But anyways,
But,
this is
but
not that I'm
you
trying to
know,
look
you know
more
why I'm
philosophical.
asking? Amber, you know why I'm asking? Because there's a meaning for the left knee or the right knee. So I want to know if you want to.
The right knee.
Okay, good.
You see, so again, this is
So
not
I
for
will tell you the
philosophical
meaning.
reasons. This is because
Okay.
of my leg. So last time we covered a big part of this, and actually today we're finishing what would be the content of the first two modules in the original course, because this week you can imagine, we're getting into more practical things. Um, and so today I'm gonna give you guys, Alba, and all of you guys, when you're watching the recording, I'm going to give you more of two very practical approaches to, put into practice all we have seen, especially last Thursday and Friday. Well, everything, but especially that. So this means we'll finish the teaching to Reddit language skills part, and then we will see how, again, this works in developing engaging activities for diverse learners. So first things
I'll
first,
go for my glasses. I'll go for my glasses. Wait.
okay, there's,
Mm-hmm.
all right, so we have our section header here, and before we go to backward design, I just want to make a short reminder, or to give you guys a short reminder on some key concepts we discussed. We talked about self-efficacy, we talked about motivation, we talked about universal design for learners, basically how these connected to learning styles. And then we said that more than learning styles, we should, or we are recommended to talk about the study preferences to avoid the confusion with a framework that in the end is not proven. This is when you talk about study preferences, it sounds less technical, it sounds less connected to a specific theory, and therefore it's first more practical, and second, of course, the benefits of not being connected to this, that for some people is like a written on stone kind of thing. Like this is the way the brain of our students work. So on the one hand, study preferences, and on the other hand, we talked about multiple intelligences, also as an idea that became or should become for us a philosophy, maybe, to use a word, right? Like the way we should look at our students as complex human beings that have preferences, particular talents, and not just somebody who limits themselves to, I'm good at sports and that's it. Then we talked about emotional intelligence and how that's like a complement to Gardner's multiple intelligence model, and how this is also nowadays a big topic in education, especially because of social emotional learning. That also we summarized it as considering that our students are human beings with feelings, with emotions, and that feel things when things happen, right? When if you scold them, they will feel, this is like normal human reactions. They will get angry or disappointed or anxious or sad. So it sounds kind of simple, but the thing is that in some cases we don't really pay attention, or we just give too much attention to our own feelings and not to the way our actions and the way we do things in the classroom actually affects them. Um, and this is also one of the big reasons for us to talk about universal design, to take care of either their feelings and their personalities and their interests, to show them they are taken into account. And in the end, all of this is beneficial because we are also working on their engagement and motivation. Um, then, talking about universal design, we said that the basis of this framework is multimodality. Talking about input, the way they are presented information. When I say they, I mean students or learners. Also, the opportunity of using multiple modalities for the output for what they produce. And this multimodality is not only a big part of universal design, but uh, for teaching in general nowadays, more than, again, considering learning styles in planning. This is more about considering the use of different modes. We said that uh, this is what we should call real inclusion and equity, because when you're when you're using different modes, you are taking into account and you're showing that you're taking into account the fact that different students have different interests, different habits, and access to information can be presented in more than one way to make it effective. Um, and on the same basis, we discussed for universal design, we have backward design. Backward design, so I'm going to show you just now. I will start backwards instead of giving you theory first, or the usual pointers I give you. I'm giving you here the importance of backward design. This is not uh, complicated at all, and I think this can be also considered a philosophy, an approach, more than a bunch of theoretical or closed steps, a step-by-step guide. And the essence is already in its name, backwards. So this is going from the end to the beginning when you are designing your lessons. So going backwards, why is backward design important? Well, first, because when we have clear goals, remember we have talked about the importance of having clear goals, clear instructions, clear expectations. It is easier for us to design purposeful and integrated tasks, which is the topic we are uh, in right now. Why? Because if you consider, okay, what do you want your students to do? And you say, I want my student to be able to write an email. Okay, then that's a product. Okay, and then it is easier to go back and start questioning yourself. Okay, what does the student need to do to reach that point when uh, they are able to write an email effectively? Okay, and that's the essence of backward design. In this case, assessment becomes more authentic because, again, you are assessing what you are supposed to assess. And this is something we mentioned last time when we talked about, well, actually, Miguel mentioned that, and then on Thursday, and then on Friday, we touched on that again when we said one of the things or one of the issues with um, assessment, especially when you're assessing objectives, it's kind of tricky because then you assess the student understands. Okay, how do you assess understanding? Or then you say the student identifies. That's something more tangible. And in this case, when you're thinking about outcomes, what he's actually doing, you can even use a checklist because remember, grades with numbers, yes, they are good, but also we are trying to focus more on the process. So if the student in the end writes the email effectively, you can say, okay, great. Of course, then when we get more into detail on summative assessment and formative assessment, you can say, okay, but what about grammar? If the email is not written well, for example, well, we'll go there. But for now, we need to remember the essence is formative assessment, giving more attention to the process than to the final product. Um, Also, I'm talking about authenticity. We should also talk about making it useful for us and easier to plan as well. Then, when we are talking about backward design, again, designing the lesson from the outcome back, differentiation becomes easier. And then differentiation at this point becomes a central point in our discussion, as we'll see in a moment. But differentiation becomes easier when we know what success looks like. And this is also, of course, connected to assessment being authentic. If you know the actual thing they will do in the end, assessing that, if the fact that they do it or not is easier, but also you can think of different ways. This is also connected to universal design. You can think of different ways because you say, okay, what's the lesson gonna be like? Like, okay, I'm gonna show them a presentation and then I'll ask them to write. That might be effective for some learners, but of course we go back to the same basis we have been discussing. Some students might be left out if we limit our lessons to one kind of input. And I'm not trying to be a hypocrite here because it happens to me in some lessons when you don't have a particular plan to make it more accessible, because that's the word, right? Making information more accessible for students. It has happened to me that if you are in this kind of task, you just show them the pre-designed material you have, or even the slides from off to class, or your own slides, or something you have used in the past, and that's it. Because of course, what's easier than leaving things as they are now? That's the easiest thing to do, like not doing anything about it. And we know, we are all teachers, that planning this sort of special thing, or to make it more accessible, or thinking about different modalities, or working on that takes time. And unfortunately, that's one of the common tensions we say we have in our field, that we want to be creative and do things, but we don't have the resources. Thinking about time as the main resource we need for this kind of thing. But this is as long as possible without overwhelming yourselves with work, of course. And when we talk about once we talk about assessment on Friday, this is one of the observations, one of the recommendations for the situation, which is trying to design things that can be used again. Maybe not exactly, because each group is different, but yes, trying to make it to make the most out of every activity we plan. And for example, with my students from Passages, I usually try, and this is on the review. Again, I have talked about this with Miguel and Andres, for instance, trying to get feedback from my colleagues, because I get feedback from students, but that should be handled carefully, because sometimes if they talking about emotional intelligence, right? Sometimes they just want to avoid an uncomfortable situation, or they are avoiding, telling you that they didn't like an activity if you don't have that kind of rapport with them. And they just say, no, it was great. And they were extremely bored. They were dying. Uh, so first, of the importance of building a good community there, so they can be honest with you, like, oh, teacher, I didn't like it, or the reading was so boring, um, which has been my case. Fortunately, I can say that those activities I had planned more recently have worked, at least from the perspective of trying something new, and maybe having that again with modifications in the future. For example, well, by the way, I'm talking here about using literature here, using short stories or novels. You can even follow the steps. I gave them options. I gave them the summary of each material. They voted for the material, and we used the material they decided to read and the text they decided to read, but in the end, they didn't like it. And I said, okay, you chose it. You voted for it. Well, a couple of them told me, yeah, but I didn't imagine it was going to be like this, blah, 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 blah. It was so boring. So, okay. Uh, but the thing is, I usually try to make a PowerPoint, or to do something that it's here, stored in my computer, so I can use it again. maybe with different readings, or I can just refine it for the group, take like an hour or so to make it more appealing or to make it fit. And of course, also keeping in mind that it can be perfectly planned and still it doesn't work. That's it happened to me, I think, with this group. Uh, so, anyways, the important part here is yes, this takes time. Assessment, good assessment can take time. Differentiation takes time. Universal design takes time. Planning takes time in general. But one of the recommendations I can give you now, before talking about this on Friday, is trying to make the most out of it, trying to design things that you know you can use or try again later, even if it is with after being modified. Um, then, as I said, backward design, here we're considering from a very basic perspective to make it simple because it is simple. The philosophy behind this, as you see, is sincere. I already told you actually. Um, the first thing is that's the essence of it, identifying the desired learning outcome. What do I want my learners to be able to do after the lesson, after or at the end of the mini project or whatever you want? And I think, well, I'm mentioning projects because I think that's one very easy way to look at it. When you say, I think, Alba, you were not here. I don't know if you had time to watch the recording from last Friday. The guys designed or sketched, let's say, a mini project. It was like Sevam's Got Talent or Sevam's American Idol, something like this. And it was very interesting
Wow.
because they were already doing this. They were thinking, of course, because of the way or because of what the instructions said when I showed the instructions, they didn't think of grammar that much. They were doing this and they were using the communicative approach. They said, oh, they can sing or they can dance. Okay, so the final product or the final outcome is this kind of show inspired, an American Idol or
Mhm.
America's Got Talent. And then you can go backwards. Okay, so we are there on in a month. What are the necessary steps? They need to practice. They need to come up with dialogues, and that example is a very good example of doing this. You go from the final product or the final outcome, and then you go back, inquiring, questioning what's necessary for them to reach that point in the future or at the end. So identify the desired outcome, what should learners be able to do in the real world to do that real world kind of thing. And of course, that project, I remember we said it was very interesting because it gave students the opportunity to show off, basically. If you're a singer, go off, go and show off your
Uh-huh.
talent. If you're a dancer, same situation. And this is also important to mention that Sevam has a theater company. In case you didn't know, you guys watching the video or Alba, one of the things Sevam has is the theater company. It's run by the showrunner. There is Juan Carlos Liendo.
I would
And
love to participate. I would love to participate,
Oh, well, you
really.
see, there you have it. And remember what we said the other day about grupos estables. You see, there in that case,
Uh-huh.
you can become the leader if you want to participate yourself. And that
Oh,
is what I was going to say, talking about engagement. So the teacher is engaged, even maybe you didn't design the project, but you read the project and you say, okay, this is great. I can go ahead and do this. You can get support if you want to make it like a serious thing, to have a presentation in the cafeteria, which has happened in the past, and make a big deal out of it, which if it's channeled properly becomes great motivation for your students. They're different from being sitting in the classroom just watching slides one after the other. um, then determine acceptable evidence. It relates to what will show that they can do. This is a song in our example from from last week, a message, a conversation, a presentation, whatever it is. And then thinking ahead, how can you assess that? We are not, I think we also talked about this last Friday. Miguel, I think it was Miguel who said it, keeping in mind that our goal is the language. Okay, we are not going to assess the way they sang, their dancing. What we care about is the language. So if we come up, for example, with a rubric to assess their performance, what should the rubric include to keep it on the language? This is, I remember the example Miguel used was what happens with oral presentations when you have this kind of a student who's very outgoing and or is used to presenting in public, uh, and you have the other one that probably or may have a better proficiency, but it's very shy. We're talking, so what are we assessing? The ability to speak in public or the language? Uh, so these are things to keep in mind when we are assessing uh, our students. Then we have number three. Of course, you see, this is what I said. This is three simple steps. What is the outcome? What is the tangible evidence I will collect in planning the learning experiences? Then, if this is a project, you think of different tasks. Okay, to reach this point, first they need to do this, and then they will do this, and so on. Um, what integrated tasks will help them get there? Remember, the topic we're now is integrating skills, integrated language skills. And this is one way. You see a practical way to think about integrated skills. And you see you're not even worried about, oh, how do I do this? Because that happens naturally if you're thinking on tasks and not grammar. And that might be one of the big takes we can get from this. You are integrating language skills naturally. And that's it. Any comments, any questions? Should we move on?
Uh, no, it's okay. Okay,
Okay,
this is one of the signs. Okay, backward design.
backward design. So as I said, we have two of them. Okay, so this is number one. And the other one may seem a little bit more complex. But first we have this very important. The backward design, as I said, is more of a philosophy than a super complex planning strategy. You see, this is a mindset. This is thinking, okay, what do I want them to do? And then you work accordingly. Um, so there you have it. And this is, as you will see, connected to looking backwards, looking back, looking to integrated skills and with what's happening next. And what's happening next, differentiated instruction. That's the other one. The other strategy, again, this will look more complex. We try to make backward design presented in the most practical way. But this one is necessarily a little bit more complex. Yes, I think, but not that much, because the essence is very easy to understand. Differentiated instruction is a teaching approach that adapts context, process, and product. This is like universal design. Um, According to students' readiness, this is basically referring to the I plus one, to Bloom's taxonomy, like, are they ready to face this or is it too difficult? Also talking about crashing, like, are they emotionally ready for this or not? Is the group cohesive enough for this project or not? So this is the importance of readiness here. So is a multifaceted word here. So and then adapting the content, the process, the product to the student's readiness, interests, and learning profiles. We see we're not talking about learning styles. We're talking about their qualities as learners, as people who study or are trying to learn something. Um, we say DI is relevant because it builds confidence by reducing unnecessary struggle. You see what we said about DI plus one, again, challenging them enough so they can learn something new with our support, but they need to be pushed a little because then they are not learning. Um, we see the other side of the story when a student has already accomplished or reached a certain level of competence or proficiency and is in a classroom where they are uncomfortable because they already know, and this is why they get bored, because there's no healthy struggle there to reach something new. until they start writing, because the typical case for this is when they are not very competent writers, and then they start struggling a lot because there is a mental barrier, right? Because they, no, but I'm very good, but yeah, but you are not writing according to your level. Um, so this is why the
And they're not
unnecessary
using
work.
the cell phone. They're not using the cell phone. That's why they
Exactly,
feel.
exactly. And this is why we have the
Yeah.
word unnecessary, because the struggle is necessary. Okay, but
Yes.
good, planned, appropriate, context sensitive, as we said the other day, struggle. Then we talk about encouraging students' autonomy by offering choice. And this, again, is something we have talked about in the past. Um, then supports lifelong learning. You see, we're using keywords here. This is good for promoting lifelong learning through meaningful engagement. The more engaged they are, the more independent they become, and that's less work for us. Honestly, they become more active, they are more interested, they look for information, and then our job in many cases is just to sit back and listen to them and see what they are doing, and then of course providing specific feedback. But for example, in on a debate, the less you participate, the more you can imagine they are doing great, because you're just listening to their arguments and seeing how the conversation unfolds without our interruptions. Uh, Practical strategies for differentiated instruction. Of course, this is the essence of differentiated instructions. As the name indicates, we're instructing or giving students instruction using differentiated, not different, not just different, like differentiated. This is different things adapted to their specific profiles. So an obvious recommendation would be make task different, but not just for the input to be different. This is when you say, okay, this is a little different to universal design, because here we're also making decisions based on complexity. Um, this is why we are talking here, or we are saying this is real inclusion, because having having uniform proficiency levels in the classroom is very unusual. That's not very common. It happens. It
Yes.
sometimes happens, but the normal thing to happen is uh, to have very different. You see, they will say 6, 7, but no. What I'm talking about here is sometimes some of them are very good. That's normal, like two or
Mm-hmm.
three in a group of 10. But sometimes some others are struggling, uh, and this is not something to blame the previous teacher, because if we are being fair with assessment, it also happened in high school. Not everybody gets a 20. Some people get a 12, and that means they are competent enough to be promoted. But probably they are still struggling with some things, right? Uh, so what happens? This is what we are saying here. You can use different tasks, or you can say the same kind of task, making slight changes, and you can imagine here that a group work is important, because you can then split them into groups and variety activity, or to make it a little different, so it is appropriately challenging for each group or for each student. This is the varying complexity thing, or the format.
Well, I'm thinking about the class with kids, that they have different activities, and in one of them they have to cut out the objects. In
Mhm.
another activity, they draw the objects and they paint them. And then they were asked about objects, okay, and they could answer. That was so incredible to see that they just did different activities and they got the point. The point was the objects, the name of the objects, classroom
Exactly.
objects. Yeah, great.
This is great, because it takes me back to the comment we had the other day, that teaching adults should be closer to teaching children and not the other way around. Because we know we teachers know that younger students, get bored easily, or they finish activities very quick. And you talk to primary school teachers, and they always say, "Oh, you need to have like a plan A, B, C, D, E," because they finish and they want to move on. But then you need to find ways to keep them distracted. But this is actually pushing them to be in a hands-on learning situation, which is great because then this happens. And you see, you are not translating anything, you are not drilling vocabulary, and when you are repeating it is natural. Like, how? Oh, those are nice scissors. And then they say the scissors, and you just point at the scissors, and oh, yes, that's an excellent example, Alba. Yes, of differentiation. And you see, it doesn't have to be super complex. The important part is the essence of it, adjusting things to your learners. Of course, offer multiple ways to express, um, especially if you have struggling students. And this, I think, would happen in, well, I usually teach with them, but teaching advanced levels gives you a little, a great way to see this, because how you can say, okay, my program says you need to write a 5 paragraph essay, but the student is still struggling with paragraph structure. So what's the point of pushing the student to write an essay? You know the essay won't be good. So you are basically putting a mark on your student. You are saying you will fail. So where's the part of us, right, adapting to the situation and helping the student thrive? And uh, this is this is like common sense, but you know, common sense is the less common of our senses. This is the one you don't see around that much. You say, but if the student is not able to write a paragraph, how is he going to write a 5 paragraph essay? Not because the program says so. Yes, okay, that's true, but that's at that point that program is not being realistic. And in the end, we are supposed to offer a service here. Our service is helping them learn how to communicate in English. And this is the other way around. This is like putting a barrier we know they won't overcome, right? Adaptation. And that's a differentiated instruction. Um, so, also, this is something you can talk to Miguel. Again, you guys watching the video and Alba, this is a very common question. Don't be scared to say, hey, and this is not like to blame the previous teacher. This is you being worried about your students. Okay, I have these guys in this situation. What can we do? Should we have a different plan for them? And even Ministerio del Poder Popular por la Educación recommends this, right? This is adaptación curricular, I think is the words that are the words they use. And this is, well, the excuse to put things with very diverse cognitive skills in the same classroom, but that's like taking things to the extreme. Uh, but here, that's the point. Even the MPPE bases some decisions on this. Then, the importance of formative assessment is essential here. You are supposed to check how are things going, because again, no plan is perfect. Just like that, you might have made a mistake, or maybe things just didn't work as they were planned. So you thought, for example, the cognitive demand was spot on, and then nobody is progressing in the task. You say, okay, we need to readapt. That's good, and that's the beauty of formative assessment, or just the activity is well planned, but it is taking longer for the student. These things happen. But again, this is important of formative assessment, checking their progress, basically, instead of waiting for the end to say, oh, you didn't pass. Okay, that's not helping anybody. That's like they say, that's going through the motions. And flexible grouping, as I mentioned before, that was going to be an essential factor here. Use flexible grouping to balance peer support and challenge, because we immediately think of the good one with the bad one, or the advanced one with the struggling one. And you say, yeah, but that may not work. That there's nothing that guarantees this is going to work, because maybe the good one, or the one with more progress, is not very talkative, or is kind of a narcissistic person, or doesn't really like helping others. I mean, many things can happen. These are human beings. Again, we go always to the same, back to the same point, right? These are human beings. Or maybe the bad one doesn't like that person, and you say, how do you fix that? Well, you are the teacher, and this is the important of having a good understanding of who you are working with. The importance of the very famous diagnose assessment or el diagnóstico típico que siempre hablamos. You go, you take a moment on day one to learn about your students, and this is not going to be finished on day one. You need to really pay attention to them. This is what we said the other day. We need to care about them, or at least to show we care about them, and trying to get to know them. Okay, you like sports and you like sports. That's it. I put them together. That may work, but maybe their actual personalities are very different. And then they don't enjoy working together. Um, and this is what we are talking here about flexibility and balance. So, and or maybe they like each other. You put the good one and the bad one. I insist on this because this is the typical strategy we think of. But what happens if the good one? I have seen this happening many times. Just says, "Okay, I'll do it." Where this is taking too long, and then they just do it basically by themselves. That's not good. This is not supporting the other guy. Um, so another thing to keep in mind is design tasks that align with Bloom's levels and support diverse cognitive engagement. This is kind of summarizing a lot of the previous points. You were trying to use all of these adaptation of content, process, and the product to make sure their cognitive demand is appropriate for the student and also addresses the fact that we have diverse learners in the classroom. Especially nowadays, although I read an article, I didn't check its veracity. The woman that basically presented the concept of the autistic spectrum was kind of complaining about how nowadays it is like too easy to label a person as autistic, like they have taken the seriousness out of the content, the concept. So we need to be careful with that. But what this tells us as well is that cognitive engagement can be different because we have students now have different attention spans. Now they have very different interests. Even today, yesterday, watching the Oscars, because now you see I was resting because of INE. I was there just watching the Oscars. Um, and you say they were explaining the one I was watching the transmission. They were discussing why are why the ratings have fallen so much? Ah, because they are boring. Well, they have always been boring. Uh, but then you see they analyze the different hosts, for example. Billy Crystal was the host, right, for a long time. He was like the icon presenting them. And now we have had very different changes, like having James Franco there as a host is kind of weird. Uh, but also they say people are different as well. Having a 17-year-old sitting in front of a TV for 3.5 hours, we know that's very difficult. Uh,
Yes.
so this is the same idea we need to keep in mind when we are planning. Like, okay, these people are different. Not that they are good or bad. They are just different from a cognitive perspective, and uh, ignoring the situation doesn't solve it, or labeling them doesn't solve the situation either. You can complain all you want and you say estos cristalitos no prestan atención, but that's not fixing the situation either
And
ways.
they are used to scrolling.
Yeah, you see the way their brain is now trained. You get immediate satisfaction. Next one, next one, next one, and then you want them to be sitting in a classroom doing very passive things that are not fun, because then again when they're consuming content that's passive but that's fun for them. uh, so yes, different diversity. We have diversity we need to address. It also reminds me of this meme of an elephant in a room and it says address me. Well, we need to address the elephant in the room without labeling, and from keeping in mind that we again are offering a service, and if you just label them and fail them, well, you are not really doing your job. um, I think we can move on. Do you have any comments, Alba?
Well, I'm
Okay.
sorry if I interrupt you. Is that okay? Or
No, it's
I
okay. I
should
said
be.
this is a one-on-one session
Okay.
today. Um,
Okay.
let's see, because I have already spoiled this. Let me show you this to all of you guys, of course. Um, how, why is this differentiating instruction the last point we will discuss? Because the differentiating instruction or DI connects to everything we have talked from since last Monday, starting with active learning. Many DI strategies are active learning strategies in the end or at the end that increase engagement. If they are level appropriate, those are more engaging than just doing nothing, of course. Um, Self-efficacy, adjusting task complexity fosters competence, confidence, and persistence. You can even talk about resilience when this is a person who has that kind of situation or is in that kind of situation, low motivation, low self-efficacy, like this person doesn't believe has the capacity to succeed. Uh, Remember, if you have different tasks for different people, they can complete it. That's success that should be praised, and then you're building on their self-efficacy. um, Universal design. DI is, as I said, universal design in action. Multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation and expression are supposed to be the backbone of differentiation, because we are going to use all of these multiple means to what? To adjust teaching to our learners' needs and capacities. um, Study preferences, you see, instead of learning styles, a more neutral term. This also builds on the study preferences because it helps learners process information in ways that allow their strengths allow and align with their strengths and interests. And of course, multiple intelligences because we are offering different entry points that can work for people with different talents, people who are more into languages, people who are more into interacting with their peers, who like to move, or who like to be challenged, maybe even puzzles or games. This gives them an opportunity to leverage their strengths, to make them be used, being actually used, not just, oh, you're more visual. Yes, but okay, what do you do with that, right? Visual, spatial. Um, then we have a little more on how the eye connects to everything. Social emotional learning, of course, because by tailoring tasks to learners' needs, we are fostering their psychological safety. uh, we are, we're reducing the possibilities of them being overwhelmed, for example, which helps them feel more comfortable. They can feel more empathy because they feel their needs are being considered, and even their sense of belonging because at the end they are uh, more connected to what's happening, and so they should feel more comfortable in the classroom and with their peers. If they are working in a or being part of a good team or a group, probably they will feel more excited, about going to class and see their partners instead of the boring situation we said the other day of, going to the classroom. They sit down, they don't really talk to anybody, and this is something I can really understand because I have been, I have always been a very shy person, and being in a classroom that uncomfortable is, your anxiety levels go up. You don't feel comfortable there. You just want the class to finish so you can go home, or you can just text somebody and share the way you feel. But in the past, it wasn't like that. When I was in primary school, no texting, just suffering inside. And you see, this is why differentiated instruction helps a lot with social emotional learning, very importantly, without going, without diving deeper into, you know, we talked about boundaries without you trying to become a therapist, because we are no therapist. We are teachers who need to have a certain understanding on this, but we are not going to solve their problems, their emotional problems. We just need to take them into account as an important part of their learning and trying to manage them the best way we can so they feel more comfortable in the classroom. And again, DI is an excellent way. Even if you want to have a one-on-one conversation with your student without making it, the situation, like we need to talk at the end of the class. No, when they're working in groups, you can just pull the kid aside and have a very informal conversation to see what's going on. This is something that also happens a lot when teaching children because they use a lot of group work. But I have seen this happen in a lot of, in kindergarten classrooms and the initial classes when the teacher, la maestra se sienta ahí con él and then has a conversation that we can, we should take advantage of that kind of situations to have interesting, meaningful conversations. Integrated skills, as I said before, DI is like the best example of integrated skills. You can use DI and you see how this is building one on the other, this is constructivism, right? We are using our philosophy to build on, and then following this philosophy, we should be able to design uh, integrated skills activities or activities where skills are integrated. And then this can be framed, for example, in projects. You see how one supports the other. Uh, Either ways, it says there that DI supports integration by adjusting complexity, grouping, and scaffolding so learners can engage at their own pace. Uh, Being challenged, but as they are supposed to be challenged, not just, oh, this is difficult. Nice. They will learn. They can just do things, and say, 10 nota, lo demás es lujo, because that's too difficult for them. They just want to get out of the situation and say, I finished. That's not engaging, okay? Backward design, as we showed before, and this is, you see, more special. DI becomes more intentional when we plan with the end in mind. Because yes, differentiation, but what kind of task would be useful, to build towards that goal we have? Uh, Even talking about themes, no? Clear outcomes help us differentiate without diluting the communicative part, the communicative aspect of the story. Knowing the desired evidence helps us. You remember, the evidence is one of the essential points, sorry, of backward design. What is the tangible evidence I want to get to know if they are improving, if they are progressing, and at the end, to know if they are actually achieved their goal. So knowing the desired evidence helps us offer multiple pathways. You see what you said, Alba, before about, okay, at the end, they need to be able to name classroom supplies or objects. You say, okay, that's what I want to accomplish. How do I get them? You see, they can use them. Okay, just they can use them, but how will they use them so they can repeat the words and interact with the object using the word? That's basically the same idea. Um, and oh, sorry, that's the end of it. This is the end of theory for today. Alba, do we have any comments? Do we have any questions?
Okay, I just want to make sure you say, I know you sent something in the email, but I haven't really looked at it,
Mm-hmm.
not the whole thing.
Okay.
I saw a recording the day I was at Sevan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw that. Miguel already sent the two classes that I missed,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if I have what you said I should have to complete this assignment. Or
If you have the link where you see the folder that says session one, new teacher training session, blah, 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 everything is there.
Mhm.
Don't worry, everything is
Okay,
there. Uh,
and you're certain that you sent it?
it's the same.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay, well I'll look for it in my email.
So, okay,
Okay,
so if you didn't watch the one from last Friday,
not
uh, I
yet.
I can recommend you now. I think, I don't know what Miguel thinks, but I can recommend you now to continue watching. Then you can go back and watch last Friday's session, and then I can change the plan a little bit. You see, I'm showing off here my differentiation skills, but I can just
Okay.
write down the instructions and send them by email so everybody is on the same page. Because the other
Oh,
guys still
please.
have to watch today's session, so there's no point.
Okay.
And so we can just wrap it up for today. What do you think, Miguel?
Oh,
I think Miguel was in a meeting.
I don't know. I can't listen. I don't listen to him.
Yeah,
I
probably he's
listen
still
to.
in the meeting. He's joined to hear us. Uh,
Okay,
so
listen, I
I
wanted to
don't.
tell you that I really appreciate these classes. I really enjoy them and your sincerity. Yeah, you're sincere, and I love that. Thank you.
Well, I've struggled with many of these things throughout my career, um, and but I always wanted to be a teacher. And I think this is the important part. As long as you have the desire, the real desire of becoming a teacher, because this is not easy. And I
Yeah.
remember someone telling me, if you want to be rich, for example, don't become a teacher. If you want to have a relaxing job, well, becoming a teacher can backfire if you don't enjoy it. Uh,
Yes.
so since I always wanted to become a teacher, I became one, but not the one I should have been. But this is why I have continued studying, and I offer my experience to those who want to follow the same path.
No, but it's not common to find somebody that accepts the things you accept. Like, I'm not perfect, or I made this mistake. Some people think they're perfect. Oh well, the ones I recall, some of the teachers I recall, they had this attitude like I'm perfect or I know everything, and that's not true. Nobody knows
No,
everything.
nobody's perfect, not at all. I'm filled with mistakes, but then you need to work on them. That's the beauty of it, that you can improve and
Yes.
become a better version of yourself. Uh, okay, so I will stop sharing and I will stop recording.